Hi, this is Rick Brandenburg for Turf Bugs and Rock and Roll. And the other day I was looking through this old insecticide recommendation book that was put out by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1961. Some interesting products in here, things like obviously diazinon that we're familiar with, but it gets really good. Malathion, a lot of you remember, but parathion, chlordane, dieldrin, heptachlor, some really, by today's standards, really nasty stuff that was a part of in the 60s. If you were around, we used these products. And a lot of us who have been around for a while, we recognize what goes around comes around, or history repeats itself, or whatever. And if you've got kids that are in high school or whatever, one of the worst things you can ever tell them is when they come home from the store and they've got some new piece of clothing and they talk about that's the style, and you say, well, we wore the same thing in high school 30 years ago. That's probably the most condescending thing you can say to them, and they feel like they're going to throw up when they hear that they're wearing the same style as you did 30 years earlier. But things have a tendency to repeat themselves and come back. And I was just looking in here, and interestingly enough, it talks about using pesticides and minimizing losses of honeybees and other pollinators, and it talks about the time which you use these products, and let beekeepers know when you're going to spray these products, and it talks about poisoning and all that. One of the interesting things, it says if an insecticide is swallowed, induce vomiting by giving 1 tablespoon of salt in a glass of warm water. Repeat until the vomit fluid is clear or the odor of the solvent is gone. So we looked at things a little bit differently, but the bottom line is it talks a lot about pesticide safety, impacting the environment, and impacting things like bee populations. But there's one big thing that's different from the 1960s and being in 2017. So here's one of the big differences. In 1961, there was no internet, and as a result, there was no social media. So the only people, or for the most part, the only people that read things about bee kills and pesticide issues were the agricultural people who were actually using these products. Now, everybody can read about it. And we all know that in social media that these things are like wildfires. They just spread very rapidly. And we've talked a lot about turf bugs and rock and roll, about how issues, take hold, and it doesn't necessarily, they don't have to be factual. They just have to either be emotional or strike a chord with a percentage of the public, and they're going to grab them and run with them. And so that's a huge thing. These products from the 1960s, in comparison to the products we use in 2017, it's like they're from different universes. The toxicity, the residual impact, the potential negative impact on human health and the environment was really high. And by today's standards, they're much better. But from a societal perspective, we have a lot of concern over pesticide use simply because social media spreads a lot of information, and a lot of people who might not normally even think about pesticides are being inundated with it over and over again on Facebook and other social medias. So that's a huge difference, and the bottom line is social media is a part of life. We got to learn how to deal with the fallout from misinformation that's put on social media. We'll talk more about this later. Hope that helps. See you again soon.